So, I've been very conflicted about how I want to make this video. Originally, I thought I was going to script it all out and read off a script the way I normally do, but the more I think about it, the more I think that this video would benefit from me just being able to talk about what I need to, when I need to, instead of trying to think of everything beforehand. This way it'll feel more like a conversation, I guess. By this point, I have played both Scarlet and Violet, both once each, and I think that'll help me put together what I want to say a bit more. So with that said, I think I should just get into it. But before we dive deep in, I do want to say that I'm not going to really touch much on the performance. I did have some issues in the common place that everyone has issues with, and I did get the occasional crashes. Whatever. If performance was a big issue about it, you already would have decided not to play the game, and that's your choice, whatever. I, however, did decide to stick through it all, and I gotta say, it's still fun. I like the game, but it's just like, it's hard, because I get the feeling that most people are pretty content with the game, but there is a large majority of fans who vehemently despise this game. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't really see it. I mean, this game is not perfect. It has so much that is wrong with it. But in the end, I will say there is enough good that's going on to make me like it. I don't know. So if you are one of those people with one of those extreme opinions, you're probably going to disagree with a lot of what I say. I don't think this is the best Pokemon game ever or the best game ever, but I also don't think it's the worst. I think it's a lot better than Sword and Shield and X and Y and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Whether or not it's better than some of the older gen games or better than like Legends Arceus, Sun and Moon, I still haven't made up my mind yet. That's just how it is, I guess. I think this game needs to sit and solidify, and I also think that the DLC will change the way I think or reinforce the way I think. So I'm kind of just waiting for that to come out before I make up my mind on that. Anyway, so for the first big section of things that I want to talk about is the region design. I gotta say that the world of Scarlet and Violet, that is the Paldea region, just felt kind of bland. If I'm gonna be honest, Pokemon can work in an open world game. And honestly, if you're gonna create an open world game, you gotta look at what has been done previously and take what other games have done well and introduce it and incorporate it into your own game. Now, this game, when it first came out, was supposed to be presented as like the Breath of the Wild of Pokemon. And I disagree. Breath of the Wild was amazing. It was exploration the game. The epitome of exploration. Like, fuck the story. You don't have to pay attention to the story. You don't have to progress into anything. You go where you want to. And everywhere you do go, there is something there. And I kind of didn't feel that with Scarlet and Violet. And there are other two big open world games that I'm probably going to be comparing Scarlet and Violet a lot to, besides Breath of the Wild, and those are Elden Ring.
The fallen leaves tell a story. Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome dung-eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
You are maidenless.
Ring and Skyrim.
You're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right? Walked right into that Imperial ambush, same as us. And that thief over there.
Damn you Stormcloaks. Skyrim was fine until you came along. Empire. Why are we stopping?
Why do you think? End of the line.
Let's go. Shouldn't keep the gods waiting for us.
No, wait! We're not rebels!
Face your death with some courage, thief.
You've got to tell them! We weren't with you! This is a mistake!
Step towards the block when we call your name. One at a time!
Empire loves their damn lists.
The Nord and the Rags!
There it is again. Did you hear that?
I said next prisoner.
To the block, prisoner. Nice and easy.
What in oblivion is that?
Sentries, what do you see?
It's in the clouds.
Dragon!
Get the town people to safety! Someone get the battle mages out here now! This way!
See, the thing is, with an open world game, I feel like in order to keep players entranced in exploring your world, objectives kinda don't matter. And you see that a little bit with Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild. Because Elden Ring, yeah, got like a vague objective of becoming Elden Lord. But what does that mean, and how do you do that? I mean, realistically, you gotta kill certain bosses and progress the story, burn the Earth Tree, all that jazz. But the game doesn't lay it out for you. It's relying on the fact that you want to go to all these different places and kill all these different bosses, see all there is to see, and that is what drives your motivation in the game. It's not the fact that you want to sit on a throne at the end of the game, right? Breath of the Wild did have a little more concrete objectives. You wanted to beat the Divine Beasts and then eventually beat Ganon. But there's so much you can do in the world that's not that. And the game tries to make it kind of like ever present what your goals are. Like you gotta eventually beat Ganon. But it's like, it's off in the future. If you want to go kill this Bokoblin camp or go do this like shrine or something, it's not that big of a deal. That Ganon can wait. He's just gonna keep circling around the castle forever. So you are able to take the time off and explore these different side paths. And that was great. It was perfect. And Skyrim, yeah, there was some urgency, and it leaned even harder into like a quest. You had like a list, and everywhere you went, you had like a marker on your compass that told you where nearby locations are and where your quests are going to be and all that. And pretty much your journey is driven by quests. But I think the reason why Skyrim works better than Scarlet and Violet is just that Skyrim has so many quests. Is that no matter where you go, you're gonna find something to do, or someone that needs you to do something. And that's fine. And even some certain quests will take you to other places where you will just like start to rake up a side list of all these other objectives that you need to do after you complete your current one, or you allow yourself to get distracted from your current objective and just go to the next thing. For example, in the main quest, you're supposed to defeat Alduin, the world eater, right? But you end up in Riften, and while you're there, you accidentally start the Thieves Guild quest, if you haven't already. In addition, the main quest takes you to Whiterun, where the Civil War reaches its climax. You hear all about the Imperials and the Nords and how they're fighting, and you gotta pick a side. You get the introduction to that in the main quest. Even still, there are a bunch of even smaller quests, like Daedric Prince quests, where you're supposed to do a thing for one of the essentially demons if you haven't played Skyrim. And you earn their favor and you get their special item. And they're short quests, maybe like 15 minutes at the most for some of the average quests. And you get little inklings of them while doing the main quest, and it's up to you to go to set time aside to do that. Scarlet and Violet it doesn't have these. You've got your 3 main story paths. You got doing the gyms with Nemona. You got your Urban Mystica with Arven. And you got doing the Team Star bases with Cassiopeia. And it's enough to make me invested in Scarlet and Violet's story. But where I feel that it went wrong is that the open world isn't very well suited to it. I mean, it allowed you to do them in whatever order you chose, but because there were just those 8 gyms, plus 5 Team Star bases, plus the 5 Urban Mystica, so there were only 18 objectives. Doing other things wasn't that important. I didn't find myself getting lost in exploration. It's kind of disappointing. The other games that I mentioned all give you tangible rewards for going off the beaten path and doing things. In Elden Ring, if you take out a side dungeon or a small enemy camp, they'll often have rare spells, they'll have rare weapons, might have some armor pieces that you might want to use, so it was very much worth it to go do those side things, even if they weren't directly correlated to your main objective. Breath of the Wild allowed you to get Korok seeds, which was another fantastic way of promoting exploration, because no matter where you went, you would be powering yourself up by allowing yourself to get more inventory space with weapons, shields, and bows. And you could also get more armor too, but the Korok seeds was the main thing that drove exploration along with the shrines. And everything just fed into the core concept of exploration to power yourself up. And in Skyrim, the game is basically just a quest completion game, so no matter where you are going, you're completing someone's quest. But in Scarlet and Violet, in the eastern region, there's this huge plateau, and on it there are some ruins with some Tinkatinks or whatever around. You can go there. There are things to do there. There's some TMs scattered around, and there are Gimigools to find, but that's kind of it. There's nothing distinguishing that place from just another area. Like near the city with the first gym, the bug gym, there is another plateau with another set of ruins, also with Tinkatinks and TMs. It's the same thing, but green. And you don't think you're gonna get any different reward. The thing with TMs, you kind of hoard them, right? You don't exactly use them because your Pokemon's gonna learn moves anyway by just leveling up. And most Pokemon learn pretty decent moves. It wasn't until I was doing the Terra Raid battles in the post-game that I actually considered using TMs to teach my Pokemon better attacks. You don't actually need to do that. And I don't think that TMs are a good enough motivator for exploration. At least not for me. Another thing that the other 3 games had going for them was that the world had a lot to do with implicit storytelling. You go to a place and you see that it's in ruins, but you look around at the surroundings and you can sort of piece together what happened. What I remember in Breath of the Wild is that I came across this ruined house with torn down fences and all that, and I was like, whatever. You know, it's another ruined building, and this game is full of them. But then I looked around, and then I saw that there was a guardian, a dead, decayed guardian somewhere there. And even though it didn't help distinguish this place from all the other ruins that were destroyed by guardians, it gave a very clear example. This specific house was destroyed by this specific guardian. There is a history here that happened, and you know exactly what it was because you can piece it together with what you see. Elden Ring is full of this. I don't know if I need to give an example of it, because it feels like everywhere you go there's deliberate placing of enemies, ruins, and NPCs. They all work together to tell a fantastic story. And Skyrim is a little more explicit about its storytelling, but there are still some things. Like in the woods, there's this shack with like an old woman, and it's like, oh, whatever, it's an old woman living in the woods, whatever. But then you explore her house a little more. There's like a hatch in the floor You go down the hatch and you see that she's like secretly a necromancer or something. You see all these like dark rituals and spell components littered about, and you're like, holy shit, she's a witch. She's a fucking witch. And then you go up and then she aggroes on you. Like that's not the sort of thing you would get in Scarlet and Violet. In Scarlet and Violet, you go to a room and it's just a ruin. You don't know what caused it. It could be the bronze ore that are next to it, or like Hypno, or a Tink-a-Tink. But I don't think it is. Because all of these ruins kind of look the same. It's hard to imagine that all these different Pokemon would each destroy the building that was there in the exact same way. And it's kind of disappointing. I felt like with any given open world, it's easy to get lost in the exploration, but if the open world is designed well enough, you don't actually become lost, as in you don't know where you are. With Scarlet and Violet, that's not as easy for me to say, because I did manage to get lost a few times. A lot of these areas look fairly similar, at least within a certain area in a certain province. They look kind of similar. And the way a lot of open worlds combat this feeling is by giving you big landmarks to always compare yourself against, so you know where you are in the world. Breath of the Wild had the Divine Beasts as well as Hyrule Castle. You could always figure out where you were by looking around and seeing where you were in relative position to these 5 landmarks. If you replaced all of the texturing on the ground with just like a flat texture and didn't rely on like colors in the environment, you could still figure out where you were, because there were these massive landmarks that you could see from basically the entire map. And just by figuring out where you are in relation to them, you could figure out where you were in the map. And it helps because those 5 landmarks, there's one in the middle, that's Hyrule Castle, and then the 4 Divine Beasts are in the 4 corners of the world. In Elden Ring, the big landmark is the first thing you see when you walk out of the starting room. It's the giant Erd tree. And also, it aids in the fact that that's where you want to go. That's your destination. Your goal is to get inside of the Erd tree and kill well, you find out eventually. You want to kill the Radagon and the Elden Beast. And so that's your objective, whether or not you know it. And because the Erd tree is just this massive, towering figure that's in the middle of the map, and you can see it from just about everywhere, you always know where you are. Because with the aid of the compass, if you're looking south at the Erd tree, you know you're north in the map. There are other smaller landmarks too that you can always compare yourself with. There's Stormveil Castle, Raya Lucaria, there's the Forge of the Giants, and if you're in Caelid, you can always compare yourself to Redmane Castle. So you always know where you are with that. With Scarlet and Violet, there's really only one big major landmark that's visible kind of frequently, and that's the Mesagosa Academy with the giant Pokeball on top. You can kinda judge where you are in the map because of it, but if I'm going to be honest, it gets drowned out because it's right next to a giant mountain range that surrounds the great crater of Paldea. If you're anywhere in the northern half of the world, you don't see Mesagosa. Just like straight up. So you don't know where you are. Like you might know you're in a desert, for example, but do you know where the desert is? You'd have to look at the map to figure that out. It's like Mesagosa was supposed to be the one big landmark that you could compare yourself with to know where you are on the map. Except where they screwed up was that it's not visible from everywhere in the map. And I get that it would be a little unrealistic for one building to be that big where you could see it from everywhere in the world. But they didn't go far enough. Like, if that were the case, you should still be able to put other landmarks in the world so you can still know it where you are. For example, in Breath of the Wild, if you're on the north side of Death Mountain, the mountain's gonna cover up everything. But you know where you are because you're behind a giant fucking volcano and you can't see the other landmarks, which means the other landmarks are on the opposite side of the volcano and you're at the edge of the map. You know, that makes sense. But in Scarlet and Violet, you don't really get that. There are no landmarks to compare yourself with other than Miscellaneous, which is not visible most of the time. When I found myself exploring, I wasn't really looking at where Miscellaneous was to figure out where I was on the map. I was looking at the map, and that kind of sucks. And you know, honestly, in Skyrim, I felt that a little bit too, which is another problem because a lot of Skyrim's areas tend to blend together a little bit. You know, Skyrim has that problem too, but Skyrim is a lot better about promoting exploration. With Scarlet and Violet, you want to just keep on knocking out those quest objectives, and there aren't enough to maintain your focus for a while. One last problem I had with Scarlet and Violet's open world was that it was hard to explore without doing at least Arven's questline with the Herba Mystica. You start off without even Miraidon. You don't start with your mount. You start off in your house and you do like this little tutorial to get to Nemona's house, and that's fine, that's whatever. You let out into Pokepath and then you're introduced to Miraidon or Koraidon, and that's fine, but you don't get the ability to ride them as soon as you obtain them from Arven. And that's kind of a letdown, because Miraidon and Koraidon are very, very good for exploration. They can do it all, but you gotta earn it. So I kind of wanted to explore a lot without my mounts, and I was going off the beaten path. I found like this black belt trainer who wiped the floor with me using his Lechonk, and that was kind of funny, but that made me realize like I'm walking everywhere. If I wanted to go back and re-challenge this guy, I'd have to spend another 20 minutes walking there. Or I could just continue on with the main story and get a better mount. And that kind of felt bad because I was actively wanting to explore and the game was actively pushing me away from exploring. And the Herba Mystica, I can understand why they are the way they are, with the history Pokemon has with the HMs and getting progression and stuff. The Herba Mystica doesn't actually get progression. On a video that's gonna come out on my second channel, or that has already, you're gonna see me go through the game, beating all of the major trainers in reverse order than what you're supposed to. And I found out that the only thing that inhibits you from doing anything is one of the Herba Mysticas is surrounded by water, so you gotta have surf to get there. But besides that, you can do anything in almost any order if you ignore the levels of the Pokemon you will be facing, but you're able to go there. But it's not fun. It's not fun to go there because you have to walk, or if you at least allow yourself to get your mount, Koraidon or Miraidon, you still have to ride a pretty slow mount that can't jump high, that can't glide, it can't climb, and it can't go in water. So it's kinda lame. It's basically a speed boost. And that sucks, because it makes it less fun to explore when you can't go where you want to. Like, I couldn't climb a mountain. I couldn't cross a river. I'd had to find an existing bridge to do that in. And in that way, the game pushes you towards one of the main storylines, which is Arven's questline. Which means that you have the most incentive to do just that one questline so that you can explore the game. And so you want to explore the game so that you allow yourself to explore more easily. You want to find all these different Herba Mystica so that your mounts can have an easier time going throughout the Paldea region. But once you achieve them all, there's nothing to explore other than going to the predefined quest markers showing where everything is. One other tiny complaints I have is with Zappa Pico. I just wish there was a reason to go there, other than to evolve your Char Cadet into either Armor Rouge or Surledge. That's the only reason why you need to go there. There is nothing else that distinguishes Zappa Pico from the rest of the cities and towns. There are no gyms. There's even a battle court there, but you don't ever use it at all. It makes you feel like it was cut. Like there was some content that was planned to be there, but they removed it from the game. And the same goes for the Bamboo Forest. I mean, you kind of gotta go there a little bit to reach Aerie of the Teen Star. But her base isn't actually in the Bamboo Forest, it's connected to it. There are a lot of cool looking areas, but there is no incentive to go there other than just to see what Pokemon are there. And that's very disappointing. Anyway, those are my gripes about the open world, is that there's not a whole lot of incentive to explore, and that's basically it. The other points are kind of moot. I mean, they're important, but not as important as like, it's an open world. You should want to explore it, and this game does not do a good job of making you want to explore the world. Anyway, so this next section, I'm going to be talking about the story and the characters. They're kind of grouped together. Also, this is where the majority of the plot spoilers are going to be, so if you still haven't played the game and want a chance to do it for yourself, I recommend maybe skipping this section. Anyway, so this is the part where I gotta say, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet excels the most. The story is so good, and the characters, for the most part, are extremely well written. I basically had a blast with 90% of everything here. Of course, there are minor complaints that I'm gonna make, but for the most part, I like it. I'm very content. I'm probably gonna go from worst to best, at least for the 3 storylines. So with that, I will say that Nemona's questline with the gym badges and the Elite Four, that was probably my least favorite. It was kind of whatever. I didn't hate it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the other 2 questlines. And I think the reason why that is because Nemona is a static character. She does not change much, and I'll get into Arven and Penny later, but those 2 characters definitely grow over the course of the story. Nemona is just a girl who likes battling, and that's it. There's nothing else about her personality, except you learn a little bit in the climax, and I'll get to that part too. And another reason why I didn't like it is because there is so much more to this questline than the other 2. And when I like the characters from the other 2 questlines more than I like this one, the fact that there's so much more to do in this one makes me not like it as much. You know, you've got 8 gyms to go to. Occasionally you'll battle Nemona at some of those 8 gyms. That's fine, she's the rival you're supposed to battle. But in addition to those 8 gems, there is the Elite Four and the champion, and then you fight Nemona again. So that's 8 battles, plus the 4 Elite Four, so that's 12, plus the 1 champion and then Nemona, so that's 14 battles. Just for that one questline. You take a look at Arven's thing. You have the 5 Herba Mystica, one of which has 2 battles in it, with Dondozo and Tatsugiri. And then you battle Arven at the end. So that's 7 battles. That's half the amount of battles that you do with Nemona's questline. And with Penny's questline, you got each of the Team Star bases, and then you have the battle with Clavel, and then the battle with Cassiopeia/Penny. So that's another 7. That's also half the amount of battles that you get in that questline compared to Nemona's questline. Instead of reducing how many battles you have in Nemona's questline, I think what they should have done was added more battles, more things to do with the other 2 questlines, because I like them more. I want more of them. Having more of Nemona's questline is kinda whatever. I mean, I'll do it. I don't mind battling. But I'm not gonna learn anything new about the characters that I like in there. Speaking of the characters that I like in Nemona's questline, gym leaders and the lead four members are very, very well written, I gotta say. Except for a few. Okay, so I'm gonna go over them in order. First, you have Katie. I'm not gonna remember all their names, by the way. Or maybe I will, we'll see. Katie is the leader of the bug gym. She's like a baker. And honestly, she's kind of a whatever design. She's very forgettable. She's the first gym leader. And she doesn't stick out. She's just a nice woman. You know, she doesn't have anything wacky or zany about her to make her memorable. She's just like kind of there. I think what helps redeem her is in the post game when you refight her again and she has a sort of like an existential crisis. She's like, you know, maybe I'm like pulling my punches. I'm the first gym leader most people come across, and so they have an expectation of me as a sort of like a weak gym leader, but I can be much more. And I like that. I can kind of relate. So she gets a pass in my book, because the post-game redeems her. The second gym leader is Brassius, the grass gym leader. He's an artist, and he's kinda whatever as well. I didn't feel one way or another, but I think the post-game doesn't redeem him. What does redeem him, though, is if you take Hassel's class in Nezukosa Academy, and he shows up as one of the guest teachers there. And in there you find that Brassius and Hassel kinda have a history with each other. And that was interesting. It didn't have to be any deeper than like Brassius was feeling down on himself and Hassel helped him. And so now they're friends. And also they're both artists. That's nice. It doesn't need to be more than that. So Brassius gets a pass in my book. The third gym leader is Iono, the electric type gym leader, who is a streamer. And she's the first gym leader, I think, that has a personality that sticks out. Whether or not you like the personality is a whole other issue. She's unique. More unique than Brassius, more unique than Katie. And I think that's a positive. When she was first revealed, I found her very cringy. I was kind of repulsed by her. When she was revealed in the trailer, the voice actor that they gave her kind of made her sound annoying, at least to me, someone who doesn't really watch a whole lot of Twitch or VTubers. And so her over-the-top bubbly personality, just like so high energy for me, I wasn't drawn to it. But then when I played the actual game, my thoughts changed. I don't hate her anymore. It might be because one of my friends, Common Nighthawk, voiced her and he was super into it and it was kind of fun to listen to.
Say what? Do you guys know each other or something?
And also, she has the most distinct verbal speech pattern of any of the gym leaders. She's got her catchphrases of who's a what's it, I don't know, or hello hello, ciao and bonjour or whatever, and then she's got, oh, your eyes are caught in my electro web. That makes her fun to meme on, especially that last one. My friends and I had an inside joke where all of the gym challengers who would fail to her would get their eyeballs literally stolen by Iono, and she just has a basement in her house where she keeps jars of the eyeballs she's collected, taking her catchphrase very literally, and it was fun.
Your eyeballs are mine.
What the-
Hot in my electric bed. Who's a what's it? Iono.
Nope,
gym
I'm looking at the
leader
yellow
here.
triangle.
Hello, hello, hola, ciao and bonjour.
What the hell, your eyes are mine? You're just
You
gonna
don't
go to
want
sleep
my
tonight
eyes,
and then you're
right?
gonna wake up because you heard like some rustling in the corner. You see Iono creeping over you with a spoon. I've got your eyeballs now.
You can
Your
have
eyeballs
eyes
are
are
mine.
mine.
Caught in my electro web, and you try and escape your bed, and you realize that your blankets have been replaced by the sticky, shocking web.
Yeah, you better finish that sentence.
Despite the fact that I was not really drawn to her at the start, I think after some joking around and some fun times with friends, she grew on me. I will say though, I don't like her teeth. I can get past the weird Magnemite hair and the oversized sleeves, but her teeth. At first I thought it was going to be a VTuber character, completely digital, but no, you meet her in the flesh to do the gym battle. And her teeth are razored down to a point. She's got like, she's got fangs. And that's unsettling. So minus point to Iono, but overall, not terrible. The fourth gym leader is Kofu. and his personality is not as wacky as Iona's, but still fairly out there. He's a chef, and he's kind of absent-minded because he left his wallet at the main gym, and he was going to go to this auction to buy some rare seaweed to make food with, and it's your job to bring the wallet to him. And that's whatever. His personality is overall pretty positive. He's got a happy old man, but not quite like Uncle Iroh in Avatar: The Last Airbender. But he's not bad. And he's also got his own catchphrase, Valooza, which is fun to say, but is not as easy to meme on as your eyeballs are caught in my electro web. Anyway, Kofu is pretty good. I think I would have liked it better if they made him this ex-pirate or ex-sailor, and he had this horrible bad mouth. He would always try and swear and stuff, but then he realized, because he's this sailor that has turned to good because he becomes a chef and a leader of a town, and he realized that he's a role model and he has to tone down his swearing, but inside he really wants to. So it'd be fun if his dialogue would have incorporated that. This is my headcanon. Actually, this is not even my headcanon. This is what I would do if I were to write Kofu. I would have made him attempt to swear, but then catch himself off guard, and then horribly censor it, so he'd start to swear and change it to another word, or cut himself off and be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I think that would have been more fun and helped them stick out a little more. But what we got was alright. It was pretty good. After Kofu is my second favorite gym leader. We got the normal gym in Medali, which had a gym leader of Larry. Larry is so good. I love Larry with a passion. No homo, but he's my spirit animal. He's this worn down, tired businessman. And the way he talks about himself, you wouldn't think that he's a very exciting character. But in a world full of very bubbly, zany, quirky personalities, Larry being just kind of there, I'm overworked, let's just do this battle because I have to, but let's get it over quick because I have some work I need to do. You know, that sort of personality really sticks out and is also relatable. And I love it. And I think what adds to his charm is that he doesn't think highly of himself. I mean, he's not like beating himself up. He doesn't hate himself. He's just like kind of tired with life, but you can tell that he's a good battler because he is both a gym leader and an Elite Four member, and on top of that, a businessman. So he's got like 3 jobs. And he might not realize it, but he's actually one of the more unique people in Paldea region. Anyway, after Medali is the Ghost Gym in Montenevera, and that actually has my most favorite gym leader, Rhyme, who is this like a rap artist ghost gym leader. And I will say, she's not perfect, even though I love Larry, but not quite to the extent that I do for Rhyme. Larry's typing actually makes sense for him. Larry uses normal type because he feels that best exemplifies himself, which is perfect. I don't really get why Rhyme uses ghost types, but I don't think it matters because I love Rhyme even more. She's got this kind of like badass rapper vibe, but then when you read her dialogue, it's so cringely bad. It's honestly hilarious. It's great. And also, her gym is the only place to do double battles in the whole game. So that adds to her distinctness. She's ghost type. When you do fight her, there's like an option to instead challenge her to a rap battle. If you choose that option, she's like, nah, you couldn't handle my sick rhymes, man. And then forces you to battle her anyway. I would have loved to have to incorporate some of that like rapping into her gym challenge, where like she would like rap a verse to you and you'd have to rap back something that rhymes, and then you'd be given multiple options of things to say, and then you have to choose the right one. I think that would have been cool. That's not what we got. What we got instead is like you gotta hype up the crowd. Oh, by the way, another thing to add to Montenevra's gym's charm is the little MC Sledge, which is this Grievard in the back. This is really adorable dog who just like dances the whole time on top of a speaker, and it is so cute, and I love him, and I want a plush of him so bad. Oh, I love him. And I love Rhyme. Rhyme's just like got this fun energy about her too. She's kind of an old woman, but she doesn't let that get her down. And I absolutely am such a big fan. She's got a lot of things about her that doesn't make sense. Like, why is there a ghost gym at the top of a really cold mountain? Why is she a rapper and a ghost type gym leader at the same time? I don't know. Despite these things that don't make sense, there's just something else about her. It's just like her energy and her dialogue that makes me like her even more than Larry. Which is, you know, it's actually saying something, because I also really love Larry. Unfortunately, after Montenevra, after Rhyme, and after Larry, is probably the lowest point, with Alfrenada's gym, whose gym leader is Tulip. I hate Tulip with a passion. I think she looks terrible. She's got these really dumb wings on her shoes. That just like never looks good. It didn't look good on Hermes. It didn't look good on Black Panther spoilers. It's like wings on shoes don't look good. Why do you have them? And then in addition, her personality is not that good either. She's like this really refined fashionista model. You know, you're pretty good, but I'm so much better and more gifted and more pretty than you, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just like, she gets on my nerves. And to make things worse, her post-game doesn't redeem her either. There's nothing redeeming about her. In the post-game, there was one particular line of dialogue that stuck out to me, and I don't remember what it was exactly, but the gist of it was, I feel sorry for those that have the slightest amount of talent, because then they get washed away by all the people who do actually have talent, and so those people kind of suck. And I'm like, come on, that's not a thing you should say. Oh jeez, that's brutal, but not in like a like that meme. Anyway, it's not that sort of situation when she says it. It's kind of like a damn, that's like kind of a dick thing to say, you know. It's like if you have the slightest amount of talent, you suck, and I feel sorry for you. Like, that's not. No, shut up, Tulip. Shut up. And you know, Alfrenada had more that could have been going for it too. It's like the city that's supposed to be renowned for its pottery. It makes a lot of cool plates and stuff, and you can't buy any of them. You can't use any of them in your picnics, in your sandwiches, or whatever. The only reason why you want to go there is for the gym. And to make matters worse, it's out of the way too. It's far southwestern of Paldea. Whereas so far, the gyms have been taking you on the west side of Paldea, but you're traveling from south to north, and all of a sudden, as soon as you hit Montenevra, you gotta go all the way to the opposite end of the map, in the south end, to get to Alfrenada. And then the gym after that, Glaciado, is back on the mountain again. They could have easily switched Montenevra and Alfrenada, and it would have helped the pacing a little bit more, or changed the order, made Alfrenada the 8th gym and Glaciado the 7th gym. That could have worked a bit better, I would say. Or, you know, screw it, just make it the 3rd gym. After you defeat Katie and Brazius, go to Alfrenada. I think that would have been so much better, because it would have fit the order. I don't know, it's hard to say. But Alfrenada is very out of the way. And that adds to how much I don't like that part of the questline. Anyway, after Alfrenada, as I mentioned before, is Glaciado, whose gym leader is Grusha, who is this gender-ambiguous although I think he turns out to be a male snowboarder, and he's fine. I like him. He's got this really cold, introverted personality, and it's not like Katie, who's bland, who's like a sweet, nice woman. Grush is this subtle person. You know, he has the potential to be very badass, especially because he's the last gym leader in the recommended order. And he uses ice types, and he's supposed to be really cool and stuff. And I kind of get that. He's pretty good. I don't love him as much as Larry and Rhyme. I don't even like him as much as Tofu, but he's fine. I like him. Pretty good. After you do that, you gotta take on the Elite Four, and the Elite Four is a mixed bag. In the first member of the Elite Four is Rika, whose design is also gender ambiguous. Rika is female, and she's got this subtle coolness to her where she doesn't care too much about things, but cares about things just enough where she doesn't come off as cold. And you can see her look after some of the other Elite Four members, and that's also nice. Like when Hassel is crying his eyes out, Rika kind of comforts him, or when Poppy is saying things incorrectly because she's a preschooler or whatever, Rika corrects her and is just overall a good influence. And I like Rika. She's good. I like her. After Rika, you fight Poppy. Poppy, I am a little more conflicted about, though. She's supposed to be like this prodigy battler. She uses steel types. Oh, by the way, Rika uses ground types. And that's fine. That also means she uses Clodsire, which is a huge bonus. I love Clodsire. Anyway, Poppy uses steel types, including Tinkaton. And Poppy is this prodigy kid who's so good at battling that she's in the Elite Four. Which is weird to me. I find it a little hard to believe, but I suppose it is kind of plausible. As for personality, Poppy is a stereotypical child. Messes up on her speech because she doesn't understand the differences between two similar sounding words and things like that. She's also another meh one, but on the lower side. So I'd say I like her less than Katie and Brassius. The fourth member of the Elite Four is Larry. Larry's good. I don't need to talk about Larry, except in the Elite Four he uses the flying type because he's forced to by the champion. And I think that's kind of funny. He would have preferred to use the normal type. And actually his ace in that fight is a Star Raptor, which is also a normal type. So I think that's pretty fun. Anyway, after Larry is Hassel, who is Dragon type. Hassel's another meh character, if I'm gonna be honest. I don't really like his hairstyle. And he's supposed to be this very competent battler because he's in the Elite Four. He's also a teacher at the academy. He teaches art. And a lot of what he taught I kind of resonate with. Is like finding the beauty in the world even though you're pushed to focus on certain things. And I resonate with that. I don't understand though why he's such a crybaby. I mean, it's his defining character trait. You know, whereas Brassius was supposed to be this very stereotypical artist, Hassel is an artist, but his defining character trait is that he gets so overwhelmed with emotion that he cries. I just feel like it doesn't fit his character very well. Okay, so you go through Elite Four, you beat Rika, who doesn't cry, which is fine. You beat Larry, who doesn't cry, which is fine. You beat Poppy, who is a kid, almost cries, but doesn't. But then you beat this grown man who's using a dragon type, like probably the coolest type there is, and then he does cry. I mean, is that supposed to show like a vulnerable side to him? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it fits Hassel. I don't know how to explain it other than that. And besides his hairstyle, that's my biggest gripe with him. Anyway, he's still just like a whatever character for me. And then after that is Champion Gita, who is, from what I hear, is probably the least liked champion of all Pokemon history. Which, yeah, I get it. A lot of the other champions were pretty fantastic to meh. Diantha was kind of whatever. I feel like Iris was kind of whatever, but she had a huge major part in the anime, so a lot of people like her. And then Aldir was pretty cool. Yeah, Lance is cool. Just like all of them. Steven Stone and Cynthia. They're all really cool. Gita's whatever. I don't hate her as much as other people do, and she definitely looks like her ace Pokemon Glamora. Just like, I don't understand how her hair is so big. That's beside the point. Actually, that is part of the point. Their hair is just like an anime looking art style game. Some anime hairstyles with like Mela and Team Star and Eri. Team Star. Rika also has a pretty wild hairstyle. Gita's is the one that pushes it over the edge. It's just like weird, cause even Iris, I didn't mind Iris's hairstyle either, which is also big. But I guess what redeemed it was in the anime, Iris would hide Axew in her hair. That's like sort of where she kept Axew, and that was odd. Kind of charming, for me at least. Gita doesn't do that. If she kept the Glimmet in her hair, that would have maybe changed things for me. It would have added to her weirdness, but she doesn't. Her hair is just there, and also I think it would be hell to take care of. I know long hair is already pretty terrible to take care of, but imagine trying to maintain that hairstyle. Oof. I couldn't. Anyway, that's enough of Gita. Nemona is the one you fight after her. Nemona's cool. I really like the way Nemona looks, but her personality is static. With the other gym leaders and Champion Gita and the Elite Four, it's kind of fine that they're static. They don't change over the course of the game, and that's fine because you're supposed to meet them once and then meet them again in the post game, and that's it. But Nemona is your primary rival, I would say, and she's static. Her defining character trait is that she likes to battle, and there's really nothing else. I mean, you get a little inkling of that in the post game, as I mentioned before. Anyway. So overall, the highlight of this questline was definitely the gym leaders. I love them. Most of them. Tulip can go leave my game, please. She can go to another game that I'm not going to play, and I would be very happy. Overall, this questline is fine. The highlight was not the actual character that I'm supposed to care about, which is Nemona. Instead, I ended up liking Larry and Rhyme. Why can't they be my rivals instead? Anyway, I should move on to the next questline. Enough talking about gym leaders. Let's talk about the next questline, which is I liked Arven's questline the most. So the one that I liked the second most was Penny's or Cassiopeia's questline. It's got its flaws, but I gotta say, each of the Team Star members are really good. I don't hate any of them. There are 5 of them, so there's a less chance to screw them up, I would say. The first one that we get is Giacomo. In my playthrough, when my friends and I were reading all the dialogue out loud, I was the one that read out Giacomo, and he's fun. You get a Quaxwell to style that up for you. He's cool, he's got this DJ vibe. I don't get how that relates to the dark types, but he's got this really cool, go with the flow, almost Guzma-like quality to him. And that's good, I like him. He's got a wacky hairstyle. But not wacky in a Gita way, wacky in a fun way. He's cool. And also, he composed the Team Star theme. At least canonically he did. And that's pretty good. The Team Star theme is pretty fire, so I will appreciate that. The next one is Mela, who's the Fire-type Team Star leader. She's cool. I don't know, she might be my least favorite, but I don't hate her. I don't actually know what she contributes to Team Star, but she's got a sort of charm. I think what I like most about her is that she's got these big fucking boots, and the animators really paid attention to that because when she walks, she doesn't bend her knees. And it looks so goofy, but it makes so much sense, and it's kind of funny. And the way all of the other Team Star grunts look at her, they look up to her. She's like, "Oh, you're so cool with your fire boots and stuff." But then she walks around with this really goofy gait, and it's funny. I like it. It's charming. The next Team Star member is Atticus. He's pretty alright. I kind of like him. He's got this weird ninja vibe going on. He's also the Poison type Team Star leader. Don't quite know how Poison type relates to him, but he's kind of fun to joke about because he speaks with this very Shakespearean English kind of vocabulary, and it's just very fun to voice a character like that. And when I was voicing him, I had a lot of fun going over the top with it. So that was pretty fun. My friends and I were joking about how, like, oh, he definitely LARPs. For sure, 100%. And I thought that was pretty funny. We brought that up sometime. His role in Team Star is a little more nonsensical. He's the one that designs their uniforms, which is like, I get that. Like, I get that you're like the guy that likes to sew and create outfits, but I'm like, is that necessary for Team Star? You don't need that to take over the school or whatever, but I can't fault him too much. He's fun. Also, he's got this weird thing in the game where he's supposed to be this extremely handsome person when he takes off all of his mask and everything that covers his head. And you get to see that too in game, and I don't know, maybe it's just me not being into that, but he didn't look that handsome to me. I mean, he wasn't ugly. He was more pretty. He was a pretty boy, I guess, than a handsome one. Anyway, after Atticus was the fairy type leader, Ortega. He's the youngest Team Star member, which is another instance of a younger person having like skilled battle prowess, because he's the second to last Team Star member in the recommended order. He's a fairy type, which I think can fit him pretty well. He's a rich boy. He takes like piano lessons, and that's not the defining characteristic of what makes a rich boy, because I did that too. I don't know how else to put it. Personality is like this stuck-up little kid who keeps demanding things, and he's got some talent. There's no denying that, but that doesn't mean he's kind of a jerk sometimes. I don't hate him. I think the most fun part of him, though, was the voice that my friend John gave him, which is a stereotypical, poorly voice-acted voice, and I kind of associate him with that. Like, this is really bad voice acting. I am being so emotive with my words, and everything is coming out perfectly the way it should.
Yeah, well, there's no point if it doesn't work, is there?
I like it. I think it's funny. And so I associate him with that, and I think he's funny. Anyway, the last Team Star leader, Eri, is another pretty fun one. She's got this very gothy wrestler vibe, and it's fun. It's fun. I like it. She's an honorable fighter too, which is pretty cool. Another reason why I like her so much is, once again, the voice that my friends gave her, this time by Common Nighthawk. I don't even know if I can imitate it or describe it. I guess just like watch the episode to see. He gave her like a surprisingly manly voice, and I don't know, the way I don't know how to describe it, but he did an A+ job, and I loved it.
I'm sorry. You all should really take a break.
Anyway, after you fight that, you fight Clavel. Before I talk about Clavel, we gotta talk about Clive, who is definitely not Clavel. Oh, just kidding. Actually, he is Clavel, as it's revealed at the end of the questline. Clive is Clavel's disguise. It's like his alternate persona that he puts on when he goes to investigate Team Star. And it's goofy, because he's got this pompadour hairstyle, and he thinks it's very hip and cool with the youngins. Actually, though, partway through the story, if you go to Director Clavel's office, he'll ask you which type of hairstyle is very cool, and you get to choose one of the hairstyles, and I think it's such a big letdown that he doesn't change his hairstyle for Clive to be whatever you tell him. Because I told him a bowl cut. I was expecting Clive to show up to the next Team Star outing with the bowl cut. That didn't happen, and it's a missed opportunity. I think that would have been hilarious if he changed his hairstyle to whatever you told Director Clavel was cool. Anyway, Clive is fun. There's not a whole lot else I can say about it. It's very obvious that he's Clavel. And then the other major character in the questline is Penny, who is also Cassiopeia, the one who hacks your phone to get you to do all these different stuff for her. Penny, I kind of like. She's got this very reserved, techie personality, and she's really into Eevee. And while I really like Eevee, it's the other parts of her personality that I resonate with more. I graduated with a degree in computer science, and I would consider myself to be a little more introverted, so I relate to Penny a lot. What I don't agree with, though, is that when you start the quest line, she's like, oh, you gotta take down all these Team Star bases. I'm like, yeah, sick, let's do it. These are disruptive students, let's show them who's boss. Maybe literally. But then the way she does it is that she's like, oh, you know, I declared war against all of them, and I used your name to do it. I'm like, what the fuck? Cassiopeia? God damn, like, no, that's not how you do things. Don't drag me under the bus like this. Use your own name. Use your own name. Or use Clive. Why me? I'm just this nobody that saved you on the stairs, but I'm not supposed to know that. Why are you doing this? Now I've got like hundreds of students angry at me because I've declared war against their leaders. Even though I haven't. It was you. Anyway, as you go about the storyline, you find out more that like Team Star is not actually a group of disruptive students, although, you know, they are actually disruptive students, but they are misunderstood. They were bullied, and they felt that the teachers didn't help them, so they ganged up together and relied on each other for support and friendship. Together they were able to grow confidence and be more than they were before. And I think that's a good story to tell. I like Team Star. And Cassiopeia turns out to be the leader of Team Star. Penny, I guess, uses hacked phones and voice modulations, I guess, to control everyone. Because she's so shy, she can't do it herself. But she's actually like a really gifted child who's super techie and has no problems hacking different systems. She's really smart, she's really shy, and she also grows. Eventually she comes out of her shell, and I think that's really beautiful. The way she, at the end of the questline, reveals herself, and I think the part that was most beautiful is at the very, very end of the questline. She reveals herself to you and and Clavel. But Clavel sort of orchestrated for all of the other Team Star leaders to be hiding in the background while she does that, so each of the Team Star leaders sees her for who she actually is. And despite her actual presence not being very intimidating, they all accept her for who she is. And I like that. I think more people in the world should be like that. When people are vulnerable, they put up walls, but when they reveal to you who they really are, you shouldn't be the kind of person to push them away, even if they are not who you thought they were. And I like that the other Team Star members didn't do that. They accepted her for who she was, and they kept going about it. And I think this storyline also had a win-win solution to it. Yes, Team Star members did disrupt a lot of the school operations, but in the end they were able to find a way for all of the Team Star members to instead use their talents to help the school by training up students, and I think that's good. I still think they should have been punished a little bit, but that's just me. I think that's highly subjective. Instead, they were let off lightly, but that's beside the point. Anyway, Team Star's questline, big positive. I like all the characters. I like the story that it tells. The reveals of Clive being Clavel, and then Cassiopeia being Penny, and also Cassiopeia being the one big leader of Team Star that all the other leaders are looking up to. It was very predictable, I will say. It was not surprising, but it was very charming. And I think that brings us to the last questline, which is with Arven. Arven, when you first meet him, is very rude. He pushes you away, kind of doesn't want anything to do with Miraidon, and after you beat up his little squabbit, he gets his mind together, understands that you're not like trying to hurt him, you're trying to be friendly, and he kind of opens up to you a little bit. But I think the real reason why I like Arven's story so much is that it is a very personal journey, which is not something Pokemon has really done before. In the other games, it's all about these like big, grand, saving the world from a existential threat storyline. And while that has its own merits, it's extremely refreshing to see Pokemon focus on just one character. Technically two, because you've got his Mabosstiff. The whole storyline is centered around Arven trying to find these different Herba Mystica to help heal his Mabosstiff, his little dog, because his dog is growing old and is having health problems, and he wants to heal up Mabosstiff again, and that's very sweet, honestly. He starts off just like Cassiopeia, very walled off, very separated from you. He puts up these walls. But as you start to help him more, he reveals a little bit more about what he's like. He talks to you about Mabosstiff and how Mabosstiff was like his one true friend, and that he really wants to make Mabosstiff healthy again. And then at the climax, you find out that he's actually the son of the professor of the region, and that the professor neglected him as a child, and so he had to learn to live on his own. And Mabosstiff was the one friend that he had. I think that's sad, but that's also very sweet. And then eventually he grows open to you, and it's clear that he's got, well, daddy issues in Pokemon Violet, but mommy issues in Pokemon Scarlet. And it's kind of cool to see him come out of his shell and sort of realize the kind of person that he is. And in the end, he turns out to be a very happy person. He was able to heal up Mabosstiff back to full health, thanks to your help. And he was able to understand that he's not as weak as he once thought he was. He learns a little more about his place in the world and the extent of his capabilities, and it's this sort of like self-realization that I really adore. Arven also just has like a deep personal story, and I think we can all relate to that. He's got a little bit of trauma, he's got a little bit of sadness, but he also has a lot to live for, and he realizes that in the end. I do think that at the start he was kind of depressed, but towards the end, after you help him out, he's recovered. And Mabosstiff is sort of a parallel to that. So as Mabosstiff starts to heal up, so does Arven, at least mentally. And that's cool. I think Pokemon should do more of that. I'm struggling to come up with the words to say about this, because with the other storylines there are very tangible things to talk about, like characters that I can decide whether or not I liked or didn't like. Arven, the only character that you get in his storyline is Arven himself. You get a little bit of Professor Turo or Asada, but they don't really reveal much about their personalities. They don't grow, they don't change. They're not relevant until the climax of the story. Once you get the Herba Mystica, they tell you, oh, your mounts can now run faster or jump higher or whatever. And it doesn't reveal anything about their personalities. Whereas Arven is the main person that's driving the storyline, and he has a very deep story. Arven is amazing. I will say it's a little bit too spread out. I think there's a huge gap in between the third and fourth Urba Mystica, but that's not really the quest line's fault. That's the other two quest lines' fault. For like, really, it's Nemona's quest line's fault for having too much stuff. That the other two quest lines kind of have to get spread out a little bit more. Anyway, that brings us to the climax of the story. After you finish all three quest lines, you gather up Nemona, Penny, and Arven, and then you head into the Great Crater of Paldea, where you find the Paradox Pokemon, which are Pokemon that come from either the future or the past, depending on which game you play. And then as you make your way down to the center at the bottom of the Crater of Paldea, you start to learn a little bit more about what happened prior to the events of this game. And you learn that about all of the characters present. You learn that about the professor, either Sada or Turo, and then you also learn about Arven, Penny, and Nemona. There are little bits of dialogue, and it goes by really fast. You can't really read it out loud if you wanted to, because it just goes by that fast. No one, well, probably some people can speak that fast, but most people won't. But you can read it that fast. And you do learn a little bit more about each of those characters. Penny is kind of a savage. She like insults the other two, and they rebut, and I don't think any feelings are hurt, but like, whoa, Penny, I didn't know you were capable of that. And then Nemona, turns out that she was also kind of neglected. She had a sister, and her parents are the inventors of like the Rotom phone or whatever. And her sister is poised to take over the company, and so Nemona was kind of left to do her own thing, which she really grew into battling, and that's fine. I kind of wish that her storyline revealed a little more about that rather than just like a text blurb at the climax of the game. It did make me like her more. And then Arven goes more into his backstory. And about how much like deep resentment he holds for his parents. But it seems like everyone's got daddy or mommy issues these days, at least in video games. Oh yeah, we also find out that Penny's parents are overprotective of her, and she kind of just wants to get away from all that. She doesn't want to deal with them because she wants to be her own person. And I can also identify with that. Another reason why I really like Penny as a character. Anyway, as you're heading down the Crater of Paldea, you're activating different research stations, and each time you do, you learn a little bit more about the professor and what they were doing. Essentially, they found a time machine at the bottom, at the center of the Crater of Paldea, and their entire life's goal was to reactivate it and use it to time travel. And because of that, they neglected Arven, and Arven makes this very clear that he disagrees heavily with what they were doing, and holds, like I said before, he holds an inner resentment toward them because of that. Like, he wanted a parent, but he got one that was absent. The professors don't really show any empathy toward him because of that, although I think in the end you do find out that they care about Arven, just a little bit. They're trying to shield him from the fact that they are dead. I don't think there's a clearer way to put it than just that. They are dead. Professor Sada and Turo died during an accident, getting all the Pokemon from either the future or the past to where they are now. All their research was driven by this book of research notes from an old researcher called either the Scarlet book or the Violet book, depending on which game you're playing, and it details all the different Paradox Pokemon, and they wanted to see it for themselves, so they were working on the time machine. It's not clear whether they invented it or they found it and were just trying to get it to work or whatever. And then once you reach the very bottom of the Crater of Paldea, you get that reveal that they are dead, and that they turn to you, the main character, to like help them with everything, because they don't think that Arven can handle the news that they are dead. I can kind of see that. It's kind of nonsensical at the same time. But in the end, I think it shows that they did care about Arven a little bit, and that's kind of nice. And then when you reach the very bottom of the Crater of Paldea, in the very room with the time machine, I think this is probably the peak of Scarlet and Violet, where you fight AI Turo or AI Sada, because they reveal that they're just like an AI that resembles the person that programmed it. And I think the AI eventually realized that letting all these Paradox Pokemon out into the world is not right, and so they are depending on you, the player, to do that. But somewhere deep in their code is a failsafe where they are supposed to defend the time machine if someone were to try and turn it off. So then it's up to you, and then you get in this fight between your Miraidon and another Miraidon, or your Koraidon and another Koraidon. And it's actually probably one of the most epic climaxes that I've had in a Pokemon game, because all the other ones just involve defeating a champion. And while the champions are cool, they don't really resolve any plot threads. But this one definitely does. It was good. I think having the gym leaders and the Elite Four and the champion sectioned off into their own quest line really allowed the climax of Scarlet and Violet's story to be its own thing. Because even in Sword and Shield, when they tried to do a different story with Chairman Rose and his fucking stupid plan, in the end, the final battle is still against Leon. You're still fighting the champion as the final battle of the story, whereas in here, you're actually fighting the professor. That's a cool twist on things. And in addition, there's the resolution to at least Arven's storyline. Actually, that's the one main complaint I have about the story of Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, sure, some characters suck, or some quest lines like don't have the motivation behind them that they should. But the thing that I didn't like the most about Scarlet and Violet's storyline was the fact that it's supposed to be this joining together of the three storylines, but in reality, it just resolved Arven's storyline. Nemona and Penny were there for moral support. They didn't serve a purpose in the climax. They had to sort of be shoehorned in. Nemona is supposed to be there because she's a really good battler and is able to defend everyone else from all these super powerful Paradox Pokemon. And Penny is supposed to be there because she's really techy and can help with any sort of like technical problems they come across or mechanical problems. But in reality, Nemona is there for one battle when she helps you, and then at the very bottom she runs off with Penny to go defend against Paradox Pokemon. Penny turns on the light switch at the top and then helps you with another fight partway down, and then she runs off with Nemona to go battle Paradox Pokemon or whatever, and then it's just you and Arven, the way it should have been. I kind of wish there was a little more in the climax that would involve Nemona and Penny a little more, because as it stands now, they're not really there for a purpose. But the storyline that we did get, that just concerns Arven and the professor, that was really good. I kind of got an inkling of it as I started going down the Great Crater of Paldea, that the professor that we've been talking to is not exactly who they say they are, but it was a really good build-up, at least in the dedicated climax part, which is descending into the Great Crater. The build-up was good. I think it foreshadowed a little bit too much that they were an AI. I think it would have been, they should have been a little bit subtler, or maybe they shouldn't have, because this is a game mostly marketed toward children, and I think they wouldn't have picked up on some of the more subtle aspects. So maybe the amount of foreshadowing and like glitchiness that they had before the actual climactic conversation was enough. I'm not too bummed about that. Anyway, either way, it was cool. I do like a lot of the visuals and the way the final fight plays out and all that. I thought that was extremely well done. It was very cool. Having the final blow be the Terra Blast from your Miraidon or Koraidon, that was really cool. And the aftermath of all that was like pretty decent, pretty cool. The post game was whatever. I don't think I'm going to talk about that too much because it's over really fast. TLDR, the storylines were really good. Nemona's was definitely the weak point, but it wasn't terrible. It was just kind of whatever. I really liked the gym leaders in there though. Team Stars was really cool because it told a good story about a group of kids that were misunderstood. Arven's storyline was really cool because it was very personal and deep. And then the climax was mostly very good. It resolved Arven's storyline very well, but it could have done a little more to involve the other two quest lines. And that's gonna be it for the storyline portion of this review, I guess. Anyway, the last part I'd like to talk a little bit more about the mechanics of the game, but I think this is going to be a little bit shorter than the other two sections because I kind of focus on them less. What I'd like to say when concerning the mechanics of the game is that they're mostly pretty good. I think terrestrialization is an improvement over Dynamax, over Z-moves. I still haven't made up my mind on Megas because I like Megas, they're pretty cool, but Megas are very limited. Whereas every Pokemon can terrestrialize, not every Pokemon can Mega Evolve. Terra Raids, I think, are a vast improvement over the Dynamax Raids. It feels a lot more fun. There is a shield mechanic, but they went about it the right way. In Dynamax Raids, when you hit the shield, the Pokemon stopped taking more damage, and you had to watch your super powerful move do like 2 damage. At least if the Pokemon's HP was 2 damage above the shield threshold. In here, the shield will activate after a certain threshold is breached. It won't stop the Pokemon from taking damage. So theoretically, if you could one-shot the Pokemon, it won't ever put up a shield. But the Pokemon have so much HP that won't ever happen. The main problem I have, I think, besides the network performance issues and play rough, which is going to be addressed in the next patch, but the main problem that I have is that, well, there are actually 2 problems. One is that it can get a little annoying if the terrestrialized raid Pokemon does like 3 actions in a row. They have a set action that they'll do after certain turns, so they can either negate your abilities and stat boosts, they can negate their own stat decreases and status effects, they can use a move that's not in their actual move pool, and they can steal some of your Terra Orb charge. Oh, and also they can put up a shield. I think it's fine that they can do that, but it gets annoying when you get like 2 or 3 of those in a row. So like, you'll attack them, and then they'll attack you, and then they'll do one of their special actions, and then they'll put up a shield, and then they'll do another action. It's like, let me go. Let me do this. And part of what doesn't help is that there's the actual time limit instead of a turn limit. So the more time the terrestrialized Pokemon wastes, the worse it feels, because now it's like the game is telling you gotta do this in a certain amount of time, but then it starts to eat away at the time that it gives you. Instead of you being the cause of your time decreasing, it is the boss, and it feels really shitty. The other problem that I have is that the 6-star and 7-star raids, I think they have a little bit too much health, and they are very capable of 1 or 2-shotting most teams. That means that you have to resort to very samey tactics. By that, I mean choosing Pokemon that can max out their stats without dying, and then just like 2 or 3 shot the raid boss. This is usually in the form of Belly Drum with either Iron Hands or Azumarill, but there are other strategies like Swords Dance is a very popular one. Nasty Plot, I haven't seen Nasty Plot as much, but Swords Dance and Iron Defense is another popular one to use, but that takes a little bit longer. So yeah, you're resorted to using the same strategy. These raid bosses don't really care about status effects as much. Like, if you confuse them, they will rarely ever hurt themselves in confusion. If you poison them, the poison barely does any damage. Putting to sleep, they can just kind of like shake off the sleep, which like most Pokemon can, but it takes a little while. Whereas like with a raid Pokemon, it feels like you only get like 1 turn of sleep before they wake up. Burn doesn't really do anything. I think it still has their attack, but they already do so much damage that it's not super noticeable. Anyway, my overall point that I'm making is that you're forced to use stat boosts, and you can't really use any other strategy. Your main strategy is to go in, raise your attack or special attack to the most it can be, and then like 2 or 3 shot the opponent. And that can start to get kind of samey after a while. And also frustrating sometimes when you raise your stats, and as soon as it gets to max, the opponent resets your stat changes. Or when the shield comes up, you do significantly less damage unless you terrestrialize your Pokemon, and that's fine. But you can't terrestrialize your Pokemon unless you make 3 attacks on the boss, and I think that's also fine. But the problem is that the raid boss can steal your Terra Orb charge, and I think that should just not be in the game. That doesn't make sense to me. It just prolongs the fight, which I guess, considering there's a time limit, theoretically makes sense, but I think it just causes more confusion and annoyance than it adds to the challenge, and it's not worth it in the end. Anyway, so that's enough about the Terra raid. I realized there's a point I forgot to make about terrestrialization, and it's that it's not necessary. You're not really pushed to use it, and I kind of wish you were pushed to use it a little more. And the reason why is because you can only terrestrialize your Pokemon once per Pokemon Center heal. You can make sandwiches and use potions to heal up your Pokemon when you're out exploring, but you can only terrestrialize them once. And that kind of de-incentivizes you from terrestrializing at all. At least for me, I didn't really do it as much because I felt like, if I do it now and just be on the ridge, there's a trainer that would have benefited more from me terrestrializing, then it would really suck if I were to use my 1 terrestrialization charge now instead of later when I would have needed it more. In the end, I think the balancing was made so that you don't need to terrestrialize your Pokemon. I think I went through most of the gym fights and most of the main actual Pokemon battles without terrestrializing. And that sucks, because I think the game could have done a little more to incentivize that. Still though, it's a pretty solid mechanic. It's not overpowered, I don't think. It's pretty good. It's fun trying to come up with different type matchups and terrestrialization types that can throw an opponent for a loop. So for example, if you're an electric type Pokemon, your one sole weakness is ground type, but then if you terrestrialize to a flying type, you become immune to that. So it's that sort of thing that adds depth to battling without being overpowered or being so worth it that it would not make sense to avoid using it. I think my fix for adding a little more incentive to use it, or rather, since I feel like the game incentivizes you not to use it, to sort of like lessen that a little bit, I think you should have had like 3 charges, so you would be able to terrestrialize 3 times per Pokemon Center rest, but only once per battle, so you can't terrestrialize 3 different Pokemon. It might be a little too complicated to keep track of, but I think that would have made me less apprehensive to terrestrialize, and in the end I would have done it more, which is ultimately what I think should have happened. Besides that, there aren't a whole lot of other mechanics to talk about. I think some of the evolution methods are a little bit too obscure and not very well explained, but I think that's just been something that's been a problem for a couple Pokemon games. And I think it wouldn't be a problem if there was just one solution, in that you could have the professor of the region give you hints on how to evolve certain Pokemon. So Jacques, for example, I think is the perfect candidate in this region. If you just like went up to him and showed him your Primeape and been like, oh, I've seen another trainer use an Annihilate. How do I evolve my Primeape to Annihilate? And then Jacques would be like, well, you know, Primeape is a very angry Pokemon, and Annihilate is a ghost Pokemon. I wonder what would happen if you used a move that caused your Primeape to be so angry that it turned into a ghost type. Maybe if you have your Primeape use a certain move enough times, it will evolve. Something simple like that, something that doesn't give it away outright, but like points you in the right direction, I think would have been perfect. That way they can keep these more obscure evolution mechanics, but the game can hint you toward that because it honestly feels pretty random stumbling across some of these evolutions. If you're like, and then it's up to like data miners to figure out what are the exact obscure mechanics, or someone who is like going in and doing it like a sort of like a Mythbuster sort of thing. Another one that I think is a little too obscure for my liking are ones where you have to like send out your Pokemon, walk a certain amount of steps, and then level them up without sending them back their Pokeball. That's feels kind of random and not something I would stumble across on my own. But if I had someone else who was like had theories about Pokemon evolutions be able to hint me toward that and be like, it seems like your Pomo really likes walking around a lot. Maybe if you walk around a lot with it, it will evolve. Then I think that could have been better. Mass outbreaks, I think, are pretty good as is. I wish there was a cooldown for certain Pokemon, because I think it got like 3 Rufflet mass outbreaks in a row, or Dracloak. I'm kind of tired of seeing mass outbreaks of them. I want more of a variety, but that's something that can be easily changed. So for sandwiches and picnics, overall, it's pretty good. It's not going to quite reach the same heights as Pokemon ME, and without fully utilizing like a camera and a touch screen, it'll be a little hard to do that. But what's there is fine. When it comes to the sandwiches themselves, I gotta say I am a fan. I think they're a good idea. The minigame to put together the sandwich, however, is it's whatever. I think it's kind of unnecessary. I haven't had any problems making a sandwich. And if you're gonna have a minigame, there should be a potential to fail other than just dropping in ingredients that's not on a sandwich. I do like all of the effects. I think they're pretty cool, and I think they could definitely be expanded on in the DLC. You can have more different sandwich ingredients and flavors and effects. I think that could be somewhere that's a room for even more being added on. I wouldn't say it's necessarily an improvement, because what is there is pretty good, but more flavors and more effects would be, it's a gimme. It's a gimme feature. I'd also like to talk about breeding. Breeding was changed in that you don't have a daycare anymore. You just swap 2 Pokemon in your party and then have a picnic and then eat an egg sandwich, and then you'll get a ton of them. I don't really have any major opinions on this change. It's free, I guess, because you don't have to pay any money to have your Pokemon breed. But at the same time, you have to be a little more particular, because if you just put any random Pokemon in your party, you won't necessarily get the eggs that you want. You have to be very particular to put only the 2 that you want in your team. And then the rest either have to be empty slots or Pokemon that can't breed, because they're like in a different egg group or just straight up are unable to breed. And that kind of sucks, because I don't really like having to switch out my party from the Pokemon that I want to use. When it comes to hatching the eggs, it's mostly the same thing, except it's probably even a little faster, because you get to go on your mount, Koraidon or Miraidon, and that just makes the steps go by even faster. So no complaints from me there. I have done a little bit of shiny hunting, and I gotta say, it's moderately enjoyable. I was never that into shiny hunting before, and this actually got me to want to shiny hunt a few things, I will say. And so, because of that, I have some shinies, and I got more shinies in this game than I did in Sword and Shield, which is pretty neat. And the ones that I did have to shiny hunt for, I didn't have to spend so agonizingly long doing it. So in Sword and Shield, I had to shiny hunt for a Sobble, for example, and I hatched over 700, maybe less than 800 eggs to get it, and that was with the shiny charm. So it was just like countless hours of me in the wild area next to the daycare, just biking in circles, hatching eggs, talking to the daycare lady to take more eggs. It just, I don't know, it kind of became tedious. The other Pokemon that I shiny hunted in Sword and Shield was Pikachu, and actually that's what made me stop shiny hunting in Sword and Shield, because I just kept getting bored. I couldn't do it. Like I tried to sit down and get in a good shiny hunt grind session, But after 10 minutes, I would start falling asleep if I'm gonna be honest, and I'd rather play a different game, I guess. I mean, the shiny Pokemon are a very fantastic concept, but with how they were in Sword and Shield, I didn't have the patience to just sit there and just encounter Pokemon nonstop or breed nonstop. I don't know. With the Dynamax adventures, it became more enjoyable to try and get a shiny in there because I was actually having to think and do some battles and stuff. It was fun. And then the higher chances of shinies greatly complemented the amount of fun and strategizing that I had to do. So that was good. In Scarlet and Violet, however, the shiny odds, I feel like, well, it's not that they're different. I think the shiny odds are exactly the same as in Sword and Shield. But because you're able to encounter the shiny Pokemon in the overworld that's there, you come across shinies more often because you're just rolling the dice more often. And so I have more shiny Pokemon as a result. My first shiny Pokemon wasn't even with the shiny charm, unlike in Sword and Shield, and in basically every other game except for X and Y. Even in Legends Arceus, where it was kind of the same, I didn't encounter a shiny Pokemon until I had the shiny charm. So that was cool. My first shiny Pokemon as well was a Lechonk, so that makes me very happy. One of my favorite new Pokemon from the Paldea region was the first shiny that I got. So very nice. The first Pokemon that I caught, like actually like through a Pokeball hat, and the first shiny Pokemon. So Lechonk now has a soft spot in my heart. Its evolution, however, is whatever. Anyway, I'll get to Pokemon designs soon. Shiny hunting itself is pretty enjoyable. With the shiny sandwich flavors, it dramatically raises the odds. I only did it once, just to be clear. I was shiny hunting for a Phalanx in the bamboo forest because I thought that the shiny Phalanx looks like little like chocolate balls that you would get maybe around like Christmas time or something as a gift from a relative who doesn't know what to get you. And I thought that was adorable, so I wanted to shiny hunt one, and I started breeding for a while, and I was like, you know what? I'm not enjoying this. It's the same problem that was in Sword and Shield, where I'm just like pushing the same two buttons and hoping to roll the right number on the dice, and that just wasn't appealing to me. So I was like, you know what? I heard that these shiny sandwiches are pretty good, so I'd give them a try, and so I did. And then, in the 30-minute timer that it takes for sandwich effects to wear off, I got 3 shiny Phalanx. That's insane. 3 shinies over the course of 30 minutes, and I've encountered a shiny Lokix. Unfortunately, the Pokemon that I was using had the ability Flame Body, so when I got it down to low health, it hit my Pokemon, got burned, and then died from the burn. Very sad. I didn't get that recorded, so you just have to trust me that I failed the shiny Lokix hunt. And honestly, I'm not too bummed because I kinda hate Lokix. Not the design, I just hate how it's everywhere and it's so fast and you can't avoid it. And I think it just like reinvigorated shiny hunting for me. Even with like the mass outbreaks, if I'm not eating for shiny sandwiches, the mass outbreaks are good enough where I can usually snag a shiny Pokemon in like a 20-minute shiny grind session. You just knock out 60 of the Pokemon and then just keep reloading the area until one of them is shiny. Anyway, this is my long-winded way of saying that shiny hunting is enjoyable for someone like me now. The dramatically increased shiny encounter rate, not the fact that the chance is higher, but just because you're encountering more Pokemon, I get the feeling that that might strike a nerve with the more hardcore shiny hunters who are like, oh, it's so easy to get shinies now. But for me, personally, someone who always liked finding shiny Pokemon randomly, but never really had the patience to shiny hunt for anything more than just a couple Pokemon that I loved, I appreciate that it was a little more appealing in Scarlet and Violet, but that's just me. Something else I would like to touch upon are the Academy classes. In Pokemon Violet, you go to the Uva Academy, and in Pokemon Scarlet, you go to the Nemona Academy, and there is no difference except for the color scheme and the name, I guess. They could have just easily made it one school. I don't know why they had to split it into two different ones. Anyway, the classes themselves, I thought, were actually pretty decent. I knew most of the information there already, but that's just because I've played mostly every Pokemon game, and so I kind of already knew that. But for someone who is playing through a mainline Pokemon game for the first time, I actually think that those Academy classes are really good at teaching some of the more obscure mechanics. For example, like when it comes to combat, everyone knows about type effectiveness, or at least they pick up on it fairly quickly, even if they don't know specifically individual type matchups. They know that it exists, and that you gotta try and change your team to be able to attack with super effective moves. But it even taught things about like critical hits, which were fairly unexplained before. It talked about stab. It was mentioned in like 2 lines of dialogue, but it was there. The same type attack bonus, if you still don't know. It talked about like stat boosts and the trade-off between like some attacks having higher base power but lower accuracy, that sort of thing. And I thought that was like pretty well done. And I am glad that there's like one dedicated place inside the games to go to learn about it. And the rewards there are pretty cool. Besides the tangible rewards like the XP candies that you get every 3 classes in the test, you also get some other things. So like if you take the language class, at the very end you get a Galarian Meowth, which you can't get anywhere else in the game until Pokemon Home integration is implemented and you can transfer over your own Galarian Meowth from Pokemon Sword and Shield or Pokemon Go. There's no other way to get a Galarian Meowth in the game, so that's cool. You also get the 4 legendary Pokemon, sort of, as part of the history class, and you learn a little bit about the lore behind them. And that's kind of a shame because I knew about their existence before I took the classes, and so I was going through the region, pulling out these stakes, catching these Pokemon, and I had no idea what sort of significance they had. And I did read the little Pokedex blurbs about them, and that didn't really help me understand why they were so significant until I took the classes, and then it all came together. And I think the best part of these classes is that you learn a little more about the people that you come across in your adventures. You learn a little more about Dendra, who you meet when doing the Psychic Gym. You learn more about Hassel and Brassius when taking Hassel's class. You learn about Jacques, who you don't really interact with too much other than the start of the game, but he's supposed to be your main homeroom teacher. So it's these little things. You learn about Time, who is Rhyme's sister, and they give good lessons. Some of them give more like concrete like Pokemon knowledge lessons, but some of them give more like life lessons. For example, the art class with Hassel, he teaches you to not focus on the details and try and look a little more broadly and appreciate things for the way they are. And I like that. In addition, after doing each of the classes, you unlock a small side quest with each of the teachers that teach you that class. And some of them are pretty nice. And you also unlock some side quests just by going through the game. So like the nurse doesn't teach any classes, but she has her own side quests. And I like them all. For example, the home ec teacher, his side quest involves him coming to terms with his masculinity, but also understanding that he doesn't have to compromise that to indulge in what he really likes. And it comes to a climax when he's trying to order a sandwich at the cafeteria and all the other students are looking at him. It's like, oh, he's so cool, I guess he's gonna order this very spicy sandwich because he's so macho. And then he's like, oh, but I really wanted a peanut butter sandwich. And then you are there to tell him like, hey, no, stick to your guns. If you want peanut butter, get peanut butter. Don't give in to spicy if you don't like it. And so he didn't. He got peanut butter, and that was fine. And he liked it, and he appreciated you for it. And it turns out that the other students don't think of him any less for getting the sandwich flavor that they thought he would get. And I think that's a good message. Like, you don't have to play into what other people think of you. Just do what you enjoy. The last thing I'd like to talk about in this section are the Pokemon designs. Overall, I think they are mostly very good. There are a few I dislike, and I'm putting them on screen now, but most of the Pokemon I came across, I was like, oh, that's a good design. Like, oh, they're cute, or oh, that's pretty cool. Like Roaring Moon, I like Iron Valiant. The Paradox Pokemon in particular are usually pretty neat, but even some of the non-ones are pretty cool. I was instantly drawn to Squawkabilly because it was so colorful, but then I found out it couldn't evolve and I got sad and I replaced it on my team. Even like some of the more Pokemon that I didn't really care for were unique enough where I liked them, like Toadschool. I was like, this is a Tentacool. But then I learned a little bit more about it. I was like, okay, that's actually a neat idea. I actually think that this whole convergent evolution idea is pretty cool and should come back. I think the designs should stand on their own a little bit more. Like, I think Wiglet to Wugtrio was fine. They looked distinct enough from Diglett and Dugtrio. I thought that was okay. But Toadschool and Toadscruel didn't look that different from Tentacool and Tentacruel, in my opinion at least. So, Pokemon designs are mostly a hit. There were a few that I didn't like. Root Bonnet, for example. I don't like Oinkaloni, but there are plenty of hits that I do like. I like Charcadet and its evolutions. I like Wattrel and its evolution. It's kind of plain, but we don't need every Pokemon to be super complex. I like most of the designs, so I'm not disappointed that the few that were there that I didn't like were stinkers, but on the whole it's pretty good, so no complaints. Anyway, I think I'm sort of running out of things to say about Scarlet and Violet. If I think of any more, I will have already added it during editing. But I think this is where I'm gonna stop the video here. Let me know what your thoughts are of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Let me know if you agree with what I say or disagree. I'm very open to hearing about it. I kinda want to get a consensus of the community's overall opinion of things because it seems very split. There are people that absolutely hate the game, and then there are other people that absolutely love the game. And I don't think either are very indicative of the overall opinion. And that makes sense though, because if you're enraged or engrossed in a game, you're more likely to talk about it. The people who feel like it's just like, it's pretty good, or it wasn't for me, but like I don't hate it too much. Those sort of people that are more in the middle aren't going to talk much about it. And that's a shame, because I think that leads to people feeling like the general consensus is one of those extremes. But I want to know, especially if you're more in the middle ground, sort of like I am. In the end, I'm not going to give a score to the game. I will say it's fun, but it's flawed. It's a fun, flawed experience. There you go, that's my overall summary of the game. I will end it off here, and after this video I will get back to working on the Evolution of Staleness series that I have going on. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to schmackety schmack that subscribe button, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.